Hey everybody, welcome to episode 13 of Scales Deconstructed. Today we are going to be taking a look at a fascinating scale that is very seldomly talked about, and it is called the Harmonic Major Scale. Hope you enjoy. Okay, so to start out, let's go over what a harmonic major scale is. It is a regular major scale, but you flat the six. So we're going to do this in the key of G. So intervallically, if we go up a G harmonic major scale, the intervals we get are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, flat 6, major 7, and then 8. So it's a really fascinating scale because you play the first 5 notes and it just sounds, happy, upbeat, like a regular major scale. But then those last 2 notes, the flatted 6 and the major 7, give it that harmonic minor sound because we have that augmented second, which is an interval that is specific to harmonic minor scales. So I think that's where the term harmonic major comes from, because it sounds like the first half is major scale and it sounds like the second half is harmonic minor. Or alternatively, you can say that it is a harmonic minor scale, but you raise the flatted third to the major third. So I'm assuming that the name comes from one of those 2 reasons. So really fascinating scale. And if you're wondering like what sort of chords this scale can be used over, for me, typically if I'm going to use it, it's typically over a major 7 sharp 5 chord. So like G major 7 sharp 5, or it could actually work over a regular major 7 chord as well, because it has a regular 5 and a flat 6 or sharp 5, whatever you prefer to call it. So it can be a great scale to be used to get much more of an outside sound over a major chord, and it has that natural 4 as opposed to the sharp 4 as well. So it's definitely different than Lydian augmented as well in that respect, because we talked about that scale last time. That could be another scale that can be used to play outside over major chords, and this one is another one, but like I said, it differentiates itself from Lydian augmented in the sense that it has a natural 4 as opposed to a sharp 4. Okay, so let's start with part 1. We want to be able to go up the scale in intervals, starting with thirds and going all the way up to sevenths. And as always, if you would like PDFs of everything that I go over today with an additional 2 patterns not covered for each interval and each arpeggio sequence, you can head over to patreon.com/MikeGaudetteMusic. So for starters, we want to be able to play the scale in thirds. So we start with our G note and we go to the third note of the scale, G, A, B. So G and B, and we run it up the scale in thirds. So if we do that, we get this. Okay, now backwards. Okay, now I'm going to reverse the pattern. I'm going to go down the first pattern and then up the second one. So instead of going, I go reverse the second pattern. So if we do that now, we get this. Backwards. Okay, now for the next interval set, we want to do fourths. So we take G and we take the 4th note of the scale, G, A, B, C. In this case, G to C, a perfect 4th. If we run that through the scale, we get this. Okay, now we're going to change the pattern, so we go down the first one and up the second one, which will give us this. Backwards. Okay, now for our next interval set, we want to do fifths. So we take G to D, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 5th note of the scale is D, so G and D. Now if we run this through the scale, we get this. Backwards. All right, now going down the first one and up the second one, we get this. Backwards. Okay, next we have to do sixths. So if we take the sixth note of the scale, G to E flat, which is our flatted sixth, the note that makes it harmonic major. If we run that through the scale, we get this. Backwards. Now going down the first one, up the second one, we get this. Backwards. All right, and for our last set of intervals, we have the sevenths. So these are typically the trickiest ones in terms of fingerings and string skipping. So we have a major seven, so we take G to F sharp, and we want to run that through the scale. So if we run that up G harmonic major, we get this. Backwards. Now if we go down the first one and up the second one, we get this. Backwards. Okay, so that concludes part one for our intervals. Now for part two, we want to be able to go up and down the scale in arpeggios. So what I mean by that is we're going to take each note of the scale and we're going to build the third and fifth off of each note so we get an arpeggio. And this is not only great for technique and practicing, but it's also great for theory too, because it shows you all the Roman numerals and how they line up within whatever scale you're practicing this in. So we get some pretty interesting arpeggios over this one because we have a couple that are the same as Ionian mode, and then we have a couple that differentiate themselves. So if we start out with G and we build the third and fifth, we just get major. So the one would be major. Now the two is going to be diminished, okay, which is the case with like a minor scale, right? So we're getting some overlap between the major scale and the minor scale, which is interesting. Then the three is going to be minor, B minor, which is the same in the Ionian mode. Now the four is going to be minor, which is the same in Aeolian. The five is major, same in Ionian. Now the flat six is augmented. So this is kind of like the big one that separates itself from these other scales. So far we have. And then the last one is F sharp diminished. The seven is diminished again. And that's it. All right, so major, diminished, minor, minor, major, augmented, diminished. Okay, so if we go up the scale in these three note arpeggios, we get this. Backwards. So now if we change the pattern, we go down the first one and up the second one, we get this. Backwards. Okay, and like I said, there are an additional two patterns for these arpeggios on the Patreon, as well as 4 exercises using 7th arpeggios as well, which are really colorful and interesting, especially in this scale. So that concludes part 2. Now for the final segment, for part 3, we want to be able to go up and down the scale in dyads. So dyads are 2 notes played at the same time, and basically what I'm doing is I'm taking all of the interval exercises that we did in part 1, and rather than playing them as single notes, I'm playing them together as 2 notes. And this is great for just finding different groupings of note combinations that you like that happen within the scale, and it can be a great way to give you some new insight into new chord voicings that you can find within whatever given scale you're doing this with. So we're going to start out with seconds, and we're going to play through the entire scale in diatonic seconds. So what we're doing now, we take our G note, then the second note is A, right? So we play those together, and then we're going to run that through the scale. So we get this. Okay, for the next interval set, we have thirds, so G to B. If we take those two notes and we run them through the scale, we get this. Okay, for the next interval set, we have fourths, G to C. If we take them and run them through the scale, we get this. Okay, next we have fifths, G to D. If we run that through the scale, we get this. Now we have sixths, G to E flat. Running that through the scale gives us this. And last one, we have our sevenths, G to F sharp. Running that through the scale gives us this. Okay, so those are the three exercises I would recommend doing. This scale is pretty bizarre, and of all the scales that I've covered in this series so far, this is the one that I encounter and use probably the least of all of them, but it still has a great use within certain contexts, like I said at the beginning of the video, if you want to get a more outside sound over a major chord. But it is definitely a pretty bizarre scale, one of the least used scales that I am familiar with, and this is probably the trickiest one for me in terms of the exercises and stuff. And you could probably see I'm looking at the floor when I'm playing a lot of these. I have them written down. I'm kind of cheating a bit because this one is definitely the one I'm probably least familiar with of all the scales we've covered so far. But that is our episode for this week. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned something. And as always, if you would like PDFs of everything that I went over today, you can head over to patreon.com/MikeAudetteMusic, or if you would like to just make a donation, you can go to paypal.me/MikeAudetteMusic. Thank you for watching, and I will see you at the next episode. Take care.